Walter Sisulu was born on this date in 1912. He was a black African politician and activist. He was from the village of Qutubeni in the Engcobo district of Transkei, South Africa. His mother was a black domestic worker, and his father was a white public servant. Never formally recognized by his father, Sisulu, aka Hamila, his tribal name, was raised in the tribal tradition by his mother's family and experienced Xhosa initiation rites. He got his primary education at the village school and at a nearby Anglican mission. In 1928, he moved to Johannesburg to work in various jobs, including dairy worker, laborer, miner, domestic, baker, factory jobs, part-time teller, and advertising agent. Sisulu studied at night school, going into business for himself as a small real estate agent. In the early 1930s, he brought his mother and sister to live with him. Over this period, Sisulu became involved in political activities, organizing strikes through the Orlando Brotherly Society. In 1940 he joined the African National Congress, ANC. During this time, he met Nelson Mandela, who referred him for employment with a lawyer in Johannesburg. The work, and loans from Sisulu, enabled Mandela to complete his law degree at the University of South Africa. The two became friends. In 1944, with Mandela and Oliver Tambo, he founded the ANC Youth League and was the league's treasurer. He married Albertina Taidawi, a nurse and prominent anti-apartheid activist. The couple had 5 children, 4 spent time in exile or prison. Black life in South Africa took another turn for the worst in 1948. The white electorate voted the National Party into power that year. They campaigned on the promise to introduce a system of apartheid to separate the races. Discrimination against blacks, colored, and Asians were codified and extended. All South Africans were legally assigned to one racial group: white, African, colored, or Asian. All races had separate living areas and separate amenities, such as toilets, parks, and beaches. Signs enforcing the separation are erected throughout the country. Only white South Africans are allowed full political rights. At this time, Sisulu and Tambo were elected to the ANC National Executive. In 1949, the ANC adopted the Youth League's program of action at its annual conference. They advocated using boycotts, strikes, civil disobedience, and no cooperation to achieve full citizenship and direct parliamentary representation for all South Africans. Sisulu was elected Secretary General of the ANC. He closed his estate agency business and became a full-time party organizer. In 1952, the government introduced harsher penalties for protests against apartheid. Campaign leaders and newspapers were banned, and about 8,500 people are arrested, including Sisulu. He was designated a statutory communist and sentenced to 3 years imprisonment. Before the sentencing, he tells the court, "I wish to make this solemn vow, and in full appreciation of the consequences it entails. As long as I enjoy the confidence of my people, and as long as there is a spark of life and energy in me, I shall fight with courage and determination for the abolition of discriminatory laws and the freedom of all South Africans, irrespective of color or creed." In 1956, Sisulu, Mandela, Tambo and 153 others were arrested for high treason and charges under the Suppression of Communism Act. They were acquitted on all counts in 1961. During this time, the regime introduced a program of the forced relocation of Africans, colored, and Asians from areas designated for whites only to the homelands and other declared areas. In July 1963, police raided an ANC safe house in Rivonia and discovered arms and equipment. Sisulu, Mandela, and other leaders of the ANC and Umkhonto stand trial for plotting to overthrow the government by violence and bring about a communist state. On June 11, 1964, 8 of the accused, including Sisulu and Mandela, are convicted. All are sentenced to life imprisonment at Robben Island Prison. In 1982, Sisulu was transferred to the maximum security Pollsmoor prison on the mainland. On October 15, 1989, Sisulu is released from prison with 5 other senior members of the ANC. He was awarded Izithwalandwe Siparanko, the ANC's highest honor, in 1992. In 1994, Sisulu left active duty in the ANC and retired to his family home in Soweto. 2 years later, Sisulu helped the new South African constitution bar discrimination against minorities, including whites. In 1999 he found great satisfaction when the ANC won the general election, increasing its majority. Walter Sisulu died on May 5, 2003 at his home after a long illness. His state funeral was held 12 days later. Walter Max Ulyate Sisulu, May 18, 1912 to May 5, 2003, was a South African anti-apartheid activist and member of the African National Congress, ANC. Between terms as ANC Secretary General, 1949 to 1954, and ANC Deputy President, 1991 to 1994, he was accused number 2 in the Rivonia trial and was incarcerated on Robben Island, where he served more than 25 years imprisonment for his anti-apartheid revolutionary activism. He had a close partnership with Oliver Tambo and Nelson Mandela, with whom he played a key role in organizing the 1952 Defiance Campaign and the establishment of the ANC Youth League and Umkhonto we Sizwe. He was also on the Central Committee of the South African Communist Party. Sisulu was born in 1912 in Engcobo in the Union of South Africa, part of what is now the Eastern Cape Province, then the Transkei. Not unusual for his generation in South Africa, he was not certain of his birthday, but celebrated it on 18 May. His mother, Alice Mase Sisulu, was a Xhosa domestic worker, and his father, Albert Victor Dickinson, was a white civil servant and magistrate. Dickinson did not play a part in his son's upbringing. Sisulu reportedly met him only once, in the 1940s, before he died in the 1970s. Sisulu and his sister, Rosabella, were raised by his mother's family, who were descended from the Thumbu clan. He was close with his uncle, Diantai Lekula, who was passionate about Xhosa culture and who oversaw his initiation. Although he was technically of mixed race, Sisulu identified strongly as black and as Xhosa. In his mid-teens, Sisulu left school, an Anglican mission school, to find work. In Johannesburg, he worked a range of jobs, including as a bank teller, gold miner, domestic worker, and baker. He was fired from the bakery for trying to organize his co-workers. He founded Sitha Investments in 1939. It was situated at Barclay Arcade between West Street and Commissioner Street in the business district of Johannesburg. Its objective was to help black and Indian people buy houses. During its operations, Sitha was the only black-owned real estate agency in South Africa. In 1940, Sisulu joined the African National Congress, ANC, which had been founded in the year of his birth. The following year, Nelson Mandela moved to Johannesburg and was introduced to Sisulu, who by then was well connected among the city's activist class. Sisulu later said, "I had no hesitation, the moment I met him, that this is the man I need, the man, that is, for leading the African people." Sisulu encouraged Mandela to join the ANC, occasionally contributed to his law school tuition, and introduced him to his first wife, Evelyn Mase, who was Sisulu's maternal relative. In 1943, together with Mandela and Oliver Tambo, he joined the ANC Youth League, founded by Anton Lembede, of which he was initially the treasurer. He later distanced himself from Lembede after Lembede, who died in 1947, had ridiculed his parentage. The Youth League's drive for a more militant posture was given further fuel in 1948, when the National Party, NP, won national elections on a platform of legislating apartheid. In December 1949, at the ANC's 38th National Conference, the Youth League leadership carried out a remarkable putsch, which successfully installed several younger and more militant members onto the party's National Executive Committee, including Sisulu, who was elected ANC Secretary General. The League also tabled a broad program of action, which was notable for its explicit emphasis on African nationalism and mass mobilization techniques. The culmination of this new strategy was the 1952 Defiance Campaign of Passive Resistance. Sisulu was on the planning council for the campaign and was arrested for his participation. In December, he and other organizers, including ANC President James Moroka, were found guilty of statutory communism under the remarkably broad Suppression of Communism Act, but had their sentences, 9 months imprisonment with hard labor, suspended for 2 years. Sisulu, along with several others, formed part of an ANC delegation to the 1953 World Democratic Youth Meeting in Bucharest, Romania. Before returning to South Africa, the group also traveled to Warsaw, Poland, to London, to Israel, and to the People's Republic of China, where Sisulu was part of a meeting with the Chinese Communist Party leadership. In 1955, Sisulu, Mandela, and Ahmed Kathrada watched the Congress of the People gathering, which adopted the Freedom Charter, from a nearby rooftop, unable to attend the meeting because of the banning orders against them. By this time, Sisulu was active not only in the ANC but also, covertly, in the South African Communist Party, SACP. Paul Landau, a historian of the ANC, has argued that Sisulu and Mandela were the crucial forces, both intellectually and practically, behind the ANC's turn to violence, that is, to armed struggle against the government, at the turn of the decade. When Umkhonto we Sizwe was established in 1961, Sisulu served on its high command. After 1952, he was jailed 7 times in the next 10 years, including 5 months in 1960, and was held under house arrest in 1962. At the treason trial, 1956 to 1961, he was eventually sentenced to 6 years, but was released on bail pending his appeal. He went underground in 1963, resulting in his wife, Albertina Sisulu, becoming the first woman to be arrested under the so-called 90-Day Act, the General Laws Amendment Act of 1963, which allowed the state to detain suspects for up to 90 days without charging them. He was caught at Rivonia on July 11, along with Govan Mbeki, Ahmed Kathrada, and 14 others. At the conclusion of the Rivonia trial, Sisulu was sentenced to life imprisonment on June 12, 1964. Part of his testimony during the trial included the commitment. "I wish to make this solemn vow in full appreciation of the consequences it entails. As long as I enjoy the confidence of my people, and as long as there is a spark of life and energy in me, I shall fight with courage and determination for the abolition of discriminatory laws and for the freedom of all South Africans irrespective of color or creed." With other senior ANC figures, Sisulu served the majority of his sentence on Robben Island, though he was later transferred to Pollsmoor Prison. His wife, Albertina Sisulu, was frequently under banning orders, the first from 1964 to 1969, which prevented her from traveling to Cape Town to visit him. As part of the prelude to the negotiations to end apartheid, Sisulu and other Rivonia trial defendants were released from prison on October 15, 1989. Sisulu was 77. His return to Soweto was greeted with celebrations in the street, and he told media of his long detention. "It was not possible to despair because the spirit of the people outside was too great." In 1990, he formed part of the ANC delegation to the negotiations with the government which resulted in the Groote Minute. In July 1991, at the ANC's first national conference since its unbanning the year before, Sisulu was elected ANC deputy president. It was believed that he had been convinced to accept the job in order to prevent a disruptive power struggle between a younger generation of activists, such as Cyril Ramaphosa, Thabo Mbeki, and Chris Hani, vying for the deputy presidency. In 1994, the ANC won a majority in South Africa's first democratic elections and formed a government headed by Mandela, but Sisulu, weakened by age and his long imprisonment, declined to serve in public office. At the ANC's 49th National Conference in December that year, he also declined to run for re-election to the party's leadership. After his retirement, he and his family continued to live in Soweto, where they had lived before the Rivonia trial. Sisulu died at his home in Soweto on the evening of May 5, 2003, just shy of his 91st birthday, in the presence of his wife. He was given a special official funeral on May 17, 2003. Among the tributes he received after his death, Mandela, joking that both he and Sisulu had long passed the age when either of us would protest against the brevity of life, said, "Our paths first intersected in 1941. During the past 62 years our lives have been intertwined. We shared the joy of living, and the pain. Together we shared ideas, forged common commitments. We walked side by side through the valley of death, nursing each other's bruises, holding each other up when our steps faltered. Together we savored the taste of freedom. From the moment when we first met he has been my friend, my brother, my keeper, my comrade." After Mandela's death in 2013, Mac Maharaj, who had been on Robben Island with both men and later became a cabinet minister, told the media that he had had Sisulu and Mandela write obituaries for each other before 2003, and had kept both. His admirers, including Mandela, frequently noted his humility. Those imprisoned with him on Robben Island remarked upon his unflappable calm and patience. As Mandela put it in his autobiography, he was often silent when others were shouting. After his release from prison, according to the Los Angeles Times, Sisulu was always a voice for moderation, preaching the importance of a national reconciliation. Upon his death, Kathrada told the New York Times, "I've always said that one can't speak of Mandela without speaking of Sisulu. They complement each other. Mandela was highly respected, highly admired. But I would not be able to say he was as loved as Sisulu was. You know that difference between a father and a leader? That was the big difference between them." In 1944, Sisulu married Albertina, a nurse, whom he had met in 1942 in Johannesburg. Mandela was his best man at their wedding. At the ceremony, Lembede warned Albertina that, "You are marrying a man who is already married to the nation." Sisulu later recalled, "Even when I married my wife, I told her it was useless buying new furniture. I was going to be in jail." While he was in prison, Albertina became a very important anti-apartheid activist in her own right, with leadership roles in the United Democratic Front and Federation of South African Women. In 1982, Ruth first paid tribute to their marriage at an ANC celebration for Walter, in absentia, on his birthday, saying, "His capacity to lead and her political strength are, the product of a good marriage, a good political marriage, but a good marriage, one that is based on genuine equality and on shared commitment." Both were born into Christian families, but, asked in 1992 whether they practiced their religion, Albertina replied, "There's no time, my dear." Together, the couple had 5 children. Max, born 1945, an ANC politician; Mlungisi, a businessman, born 1948, died 2015; Zwelake, a journalist, born 1950, died 2012; Lindiwe, born 1954, also an ANC politician, and Nonkululeko, born 1958. They also adopted 3 children, 2, Beryl, a diplomat, and Gerald Lockman, are biologically the children of Walter's deceased sister, while the third, Jongumzi, is the son of Sisulu's cousin. Jonji served a 5-year sentence on Robben Island for his anti-apartheid activism in the 1980s, and other family members were also periodically detained. In 2002, Max's wife, Eleanor, published a biography of her parents-in-law, entitled Walter and Albertina Sisulu, in Our Lifetime. In 1992, Sisulu was awarded Izatwalandwi Siparanko, the highest honor granted by the ANC, for his contribution to the liberation struggle in South Africa. The Government of India awarded him Padma Vibhushan in 1998. In 2004 he was ranked 33rd on SABC3's list of Great South Africans. The Walter Sisulu National Botanic Garden, Walter Sisulu University and Walter Sisulu Local Municipality are named after him. Thank you for watching this video.